Money never sleeps, pal.
Hey there, welcome to episode 45 of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. I'm Pete Townsend, your co-host of Money Never Sleeps, along with Owen Fitzgerald. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Ireland's fintech and financial services recruitment specialist, Top Tier Recruitment. If you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, we highly recommend you have a chat with the team at Top Tier Recruitment, as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. In this episode, I bring Owen into the conversation with Mihai Alisie, the founder of the AKASHA Foundation. Mihai and I had a fireside chat at the Dublin Tech Summit 2019 that we recorded for episode 44. But we wanted to dig a bit deeper, so we brought him back, at least in the virtual world. So here we go with episode 45 of Money Never Sleeps. Here we go again. Welcome to Money Never Sleeps. We're here in WeWork Dublin Landings in the offices of our sponsor, Top Tier Recruitment. I'm Pete Townsend, and our co-host Owen Fitzgerald is here as well. And we're here with Mihai Alisie, the founder of the AKASHA Foundation and one of the founders of both Ethereum and Bitcoin magazine. Welcome to the show, Mihai.
Hello, everyone. A pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, Mihai.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. So, Mihai, our listeners will be familiar with you from episode 44, which was a recording of the fireside chat that you and I did at the Dublin Tech Summit. But this is obviously we're going to do kind of a part two here, which should be interesting. But if you remember, by the time we got on stage after the intro, we had only 18 minutes and 48 seconds. So I could still see the clock timer in my head. And that was way too short. So obviously that's why, we wanted to bring you back. We had such an interesting chat. I wanted to keep it going. So given that we more or less covered your formative years, maybe just give us a quick recap on kind of your backstory to this point and what you're up to now. And then we can dig in.
Well, I'll do my best to sum it up. I think it's important to go back to my kid years when I was around 10 years, and I stumbled upon this physics in our daily lives book that made me understand how the thunderstorms and the lightnings and this thing is not some magical thing happening in the skies, but rather something that can be understood as a physical phenomena, and how if you count the seconds between seeing the light and hearing the sound, you can figure out how far it is. And for me, I think that was quite an important moment, because it made me think in this way that the world can be understood if you look close enough. And fast forwarding from there, I was kind of a curious mind, the pattern of the kid that breaks down the stereo, looks for the magnets and how it works and so on. Not very happy, my parents, with that. But it was part of how my childhood unfolded. And I was always passionate about computers in general, and games. And along the way, I also picked up English from watching TV and playing games, which opened a whole new horizon for me. Like, for example, being able to have this conversation with you. And
you've got the English pretty much nailed, Mihai.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's still kind of a rapping, learning by hearing it most of the time. Fast forwarding, went into high school, informatics main profile, then through university, cybernetics, statistics and information economy. And around the same year when I was finishing this university, I stumbled upon Bitcoin, and it seemed like, oh my God, what is this thing? It sounds too good to be true. So then I started to look a bit closer into it, trying to figure out, is this thing for real? After a few days of intense researching, I started to believe that it is a concept that can actually work. And to my surprise, actually, I understood how the economic part and the incentives and so on works for the Bitcoin blockchain, whereas the economy in general and these kind of discussions, you see on the news and the television were like boring, not very interesting to me. But after I learned how the financial system and the incentives and the security of the system works in the blockchain world, I got curious. So I said, like, okay, so now that I understand this, let's see how the current financial system works. And I was horrified, like, oh my God, the blockchain part seems like a lot simpler, and it would make a lot more sense. And I think it was good that I wasn't coming into this space and trying to learn it with a preconceived notion on how things should work. But in the process of trying to learn this, I also spotted the need for a coherent source of information, because it was quite hard to build this understanding on what Bitcoin and blockchain is. And that's how I came up with the idea of creating Bitcoin Magazine. And actually, one of the first articles I've read when trying to form an opinion about this thing was written by Vitalik Buterin, which I got in touch with. And I was like, hey man, Bitcoin, nice articles, really good stuff. Are you interested in doing something like a Bitcoin magazine? I think it would be helpful for the Bitcoin landscape, education, outreach, and these things. Surprisingly, he was, all in. Sure, let's do it. And a few months later, Bitcoin Magazine was live, and it was a great experience, a great learning experience, because none of us had any previous experience in doing magazines or publishing or printing and shipping. It was a whole set of challenges, but it was also a great opportunity to meet projects and people and interact with the community from within.
And get the word out as well, right?
Yes, that was actually the main Kickstarter reason in between. And it also offered us a way to see the limits and what can be done, what cannot be done, or what can be done better. And Vitalik came with the idea of Ethereum somewhere in late 2013, when he also sent me like the first lines of what later became the Ethereum white paper. And I was I felt the same rush that I felt when I was reading the Bitcoin white paper and understanding the implication of that technology at societal level. And I was excited to be part of it as a co-founder. And since then, like, my mind was constantly rushing, like, oh man, but this thing could be used in this way to solve this problem. And I was seeking these big problems, sometimes old, but now maybe being approachable from a fresh perspective using this new tool in the tool belt. So I served as vice president of the Ethereum Foundation until late 2015. After the successful Ethereum Genesis, when the blockchain was live, I founded AKASHA with the purpose of exploring the application and implications of blockchain technologies when it comes to freedom of expression, creative perpetuity, and social networks in general, as in removing the middleman from, when you have people trying to interact with one another. So the intermediation of social networks. And here
I read one of your recent blogs, Mihai, and there was some pretty eye-opening statements on the motivations of the bigger social networks out there, which I hadn't quite thought about before, but it really makes you sit up and take notice.
I'm happy that it had that effect. Actually, it was an experience for me, and the article was written as I was going through the process of, opening my eyes. So I'm happy you got through that also.
Tell me what AKASHA means.
So AKASHA means a couple of things. So as a word, it has roots in Sanskrit and means ether. But ether has a meaning changed throughout time. So if we go, thousands of years back, it meant something more like a metaphysical internet of consciousness, connecting humanity with infinite knowledge. And you would have these Akashic records functioning almost like a sort of blockchain, recording every experience, thought, and idea into this universal database, which is accessible to people entering this metaphysical connection to the internet of consciousness. That's like the more, let's say, poetic side of the AKASHA as a word. And then on the other side, AKASHA is also an abbreviation for Advanced Knowledge Architecture for Social Human Action. And if you've seen through the blogs and the communication we are trying to get out there, is that social networks are a great tool, enabling people to come together as one. And it's like with the technologies that we have now, like blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and a bunch of other interesting new tools, it's more just about discussing about things or sharing these things or liking or commenting on these things. I think the next wave of innovation will bring more in our interactions, including the ability to coordinate and organize collective action, and not any kind of collective action, intelligent collective action. So I hope with the work we're doing with AKASHA and the experiments we have done for the past few years, that we will get this narrative out there, making people aware that this blockchain technology can be more than just, coins, tokens, and get rich quick opportunity, but something more meaningful and deep that can have a lot of impact in the lives of millions of people out there. Absolutely. Maybe billions, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that. And I think it is really important. And I have a lot of conversations with people at the enterprise level, especially in financial services. And, given the awakening that I had 5 years ago, where like you, but probably a few years after you, Mihai, I did read the Bitcoin white paper, and I immediately started to think about the use cases in financial services. And I think a number of folks had done that, but like anybody, and I think it was perhaps Bill Gates who said this, is that people tend to overestimate the impact of technology in the short run and underestimate the impact of technology in the long run. So I think it's an important thing that we're able to get the word out, like at the beginning with you with Bitcoin Magazine, but then just keep telling the story as much as possible. With your background, with the formative years with Bitcoin Magazine, with Ethereum, also even during your formative years, kind of the cybernetics and informatics type curriculum that you followed in university, I thought was really interesting. All of this seems to be leading, and that getting to know you now a bit, I really kind of feel like I can see where this is going with the AKASHA Foundation and why it is so tied to you as an individual. Now, whether that may be a good thing or something we want to explore more in terms of what it means for the AKASHA Foundation longer term, it is a different thing. But can you maybe talk for a minute about how this is, tied to your own ideology, really, and how it, and perhaps even beyond that, it has become bigger and more of a collective ideology, kind of along the lines of what the AKASHA Foundation is trying to achieve?
A minute might be a squeeze, but I'll do my best. So the question, why are you doing this, or why are you an entrepreneur?
It comes back to the why, yeah.
It came a few times, and it was asked also by myself, trying to do the soul searching and figuring out my own motivations. And it wasn't until, a few years when I found the right word. Because, first of all, it's not for the money, I think my main motivation revolves around an intrinsic fulfillment of feeling that I'm doing something purposeful and meaningful. And the extrinsic part, the monetary compensation and this sort of things are more of a side effect of doing a job well done. And it wasn't until later when I discovered the term social entrepreneurship as a better way of describing what am I doing and why. And that's when I was able to articulate it in this way and see myself more as a social entrepreneur, because it's about making a difference in the world, and technology can help us change the world both in good and bad ways, right? And I think it's important to note here that technology can help us. So it's about still the human component is in there. Whereas much of the narrative these days, when we are looking towards the future, involves some kind of AI, magically solving all our problems, and climate change and poverty and diseases all gone, and in the process, everyone, fingers crossed, please no Terminators. But but the logical conclusion, at least, and this is also the scenario for many dystopian kind of science fiction movies, is that the AI would get to a point where it tries to optimize the flow and the result output, and humans become like this inefficiency in the bigger picture. Well, what I argue is that, coming from more the collective intelligence side of things and appreciating the uniqueness of each individual composing a bigger social network, or being part of multiple social networks at the same time, is something that we cannot lose in the future if we want to have a chance as a continuation, respecting the roots we have as social beings. And many people focus today on the tech alone, but it's also important to note how technology changes us, its users. And like in the post you mentioned previously, the Metamorphosis Part 2, I was kind of mapping how just 1 second of this collective time ocean that we create, it's all a side effect of us being online, connected to the same network, equals 130 years. So every second, like now, until now, I think we've run through a few thousand years already. But the idea here is that in these 140 years, if you look back historically, what happened 140 years ago, you had like the refrigerator, you had the first hearing device, you had the first automatic speaking telephone system, and a bunch of other things that today are normal. And we cannot even really imagine our society today working without these puzzle pieces, or it would look totally different. So in a similar way, today, when we look at the social networks and the technologies and the tools we use, we have to contemplate how these tools will affect and how will this impact our humanness, as in what does it mean to be human. And I just like to add something here that I think that the focus here is on technology, but the technology is not really the problem here. And I would even say that we have it, right? It's not so much about needing to build that AI or needing to build that thing, which arguably, might be a very big challenge for an individual mind to build. But it's about the process of us being better at creating shared understanding, coordinating better, cooperating better, and collaborating better among ourselves. So technology is there. This process, the human side of it, us coming together and so on, could use, some improvement. So I feel that with this take we have now with AKASHA Foundation and the tools we are building, we try to improve these things and tap into the natural abilities we have as human beings living on this planet as social creatures. And that many times, and especially, social media today, let's say, ignores this, may be partly caused by this last 100 years view when it comes to crowd psychology, and so assuming that masses in general are dumb. Well, I'd say it's, something worth challenging and seeing if that's really the case. But based on the last few years and the research and the experiments we've done so far involving technology, blockchain, and so on, I would say that this assumption can be turned on its head and actually prove in the process how this notion of collective intelligence might even offer us, now putting again the future science fiction script here, more like a human right brain hemisphere, even though the metaphor is not really accurate. But when it comes to creativity, to this imagination aspect of us being able to jump not from A to B to C, but from A to Z, or uncover new possibilities that sometimes are simply out of reach for a classic AI. And then who knows, maybe in this future picture, humanity will keep its humanness when it comes to us social beings interacting with each other and so on, and coexist with this other analytical left side hemisphere, acting more like the AI, putting us in touch, crunching the numbers from sensors and so on, and offering it to the individuals, the citizens, the smarter citizens, to make decisions and inform their decisions in their daily lives. So, I feel this is something worthwhile exploring, and money is not the main motivator here, right?
Mihai, can I ask, because you talk about it being a purpose, something we commonly come up against when we're talking to entrepreneurs is their challenge about, I suppose, bringing in additional people it's this kind of, it's your baby and handing it over and trying to identify the right people. But because what you're doing has such a purpose to it, does that make it easier or harder to identify then the right people to work with?
Well, the beautiful part is that everywhere you have individuals acting in teams or like part of a network of individuals, the problem of collaboration is ever present. So in theory, at least, everyone, as long as, is being part of a collective, can benefit from a tool that improves this shared understanding generation and being on the same page, aligned when acting as part of a group. And I feel in the first stages, yes, it might be a more challenging, let's say, pitch to some parts of the audience. But at the same time, I feel that if we take the blockchain community or like the Ethereum community as an example, that's already 1.2 plus million people out there. If we take ethereum.meetup.com as a source. And these people are self-organizing, making these events happen, and they generate this value within the community through social learning, the kind of Renaissance coffee shop, people bouncing into each other, exchanging ideas, working on new projects, finding about each other's projects, joining forces. So I believe if in the first stages, and this is like everything in the blockchain space, an experiment ultimately, us collaborating with these communities in the first stages can offer us the lessons that would help us to pitch it better and to offer something like, look, this is the community and what it was able to achieve before, and this is the community and what is able to achieve now. So when you have like some real data and some real examples that you can show, I think many more people will be able to connect and see how this can be helpful for them as well. Like
you said, I think given where the technology is at, and you talked about it being an experiment, like everyone who's involved has chosen to get involved. It's their own purpose. So I think that obviously makes it easier then to identify the people who want to be more involved and to build more solutions, as opposed to you're just building another startup and trying to hire the right people. It's a different kind of mindset. I suppose it's different types of people involved.
Yeah, I was introduced to someone recently who is, probably late 20s, had been running a nice sized book at an investment bank and had done some big deals, and then had their eye-opening moment, their awakening a couple of years ago, and left and went to go work specifically in the Bitcoin space. And then, with the crypto winter that we've gone through, she lost her job, but then now has gone back into the investment banking community to try to influence change from the inside, which I thought was pretty cool and was pretty interesting. Mihai, just on some of the things that we were talking about with regard to the social networks, one of the things in your blog post was that I think it was something to the effect of 70,000 years worth of time that is kind of captured on daily social network users today in terms of the time that they're spending on their app. I've got a friend who recently deleted one of her social network apps just because she was spending so much time on it, and just said, listen, the only way for me to actually stop doing this is to get off my phone. And I think, like you were saying, the human side of this is that everybody has something to add, right? Even the person that you may think you have such huge differences with may have a different view and a different perspective on something that could add to your own knowledge. Like, there's so much noise out there with the social networks of, pictures of people's kids, even though I'm a terrible offender of that, and just exchanging social greetings that could be done in person. But in terms of creating this next step of moving up the pyramid, like we talked about on episode 44, of data to information to knowledge to wisdom, most of what we see out there in terms of the social networks that exist today is data and a bit of information, rather than moving towards knowledge and wisdom, right? What's going to be happening next for you with this? In terms of where AKASHA is going in the next year?
So I think it's important to note how even the word social network has been in a way co-opted by Facebook and all. And I'd like to make a mention that over 70,000 years is based on very conservative numbers of like 24 hours average per day per person.
24 minutes.
Yes, which is like usually it's a lot, a bigger number, and it's just Facebook alone. So that doesn't take in consideration like Instagram, the Snapchats, the Twitters, and so on and so forth. So the number is actually a lot larger. But like the main thing that kind of triggered this. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was an eye-opening moment, definitely. It was that the founding president of Facebook, Sean Parker, also connected to Napster, declared in one of these interviews that the thought process behind Facebook being the first of these applications, like referring to the Web 2.0 social networking apps wave, was the first to actually get it and ask the question, how can we consume your time and conscious attention as much as possible? So it's like, when you think about like the main motivation behind something like this, it's almost like you have this new resource in the form of this shared ocean of time made out of each seconds of every person connecting to it, to this ocean of time. And you have almost like this parasitic kind of entity now drilling, almost like, you have the oil drilling platforms in the ocean, extracting the time out of the lives of each of these, human being towards, more advertisements and increased profits for the shareholders, which, ethically, there are some, questionable decisions there. But ultimately, if you look at it from the perspective of a for-profit entity, they are answering the questions well, and they are generating the profit in the interest of the shareholder. However, the problem here is that they're patent so cute, and like you have friends. Facebook is your friend, man. And Google and everyone is like, they're all your friends. Oh, check out that cute emoji. But in the background, like and I think Snowden had a really cool tweet, and I'm not going to go now and search it, but more or less the idea was that the social media networks, posing as social media networks, is one of the biggest, public exercises of images from the Department of War posing as the Department of Security or something like that. And in this case, we have like these advertising platforms at their core. Is like, if we look at Facebook, super specialized really on that note, posing as social media networks. And that makes you question even the very interfaces, like how are you seeing things? How is information presented? Why is that button there? Why is that flickering there in the corner, right? And even the process to which these interfaces were designed are in some cases exploiting, or in like many cases actually, exploiting this human vulnerability of creating this dopamine hit when you check your status, when you do something. And yes, this is something that is found throughout the daily usage, but these guys are systematizing this process and creating this highly addictive kind of dark cloud, like the dark side of the cloud here, that is just sucking away, siphoning from the lives of all these billions of people around the world without even being aware of this happening.
Yeah, I'm sitting here shaking. I'm sitting here shaking my head because that dopamine hit, that like button. And I remember saying to my wife at one stage, "Oh, let me post this picture of the kids and see how many likes I get off that." And she's like, "You're such a loser." I said, "You're right. You're right. I am." You've made some very hard decisions along the way, Mihai, in terms of in terms of your life and in terms of what you're doing with the AKASHA Foundation. Can you talk about for a minute what was one of the hardest decisions that you've made?
Well, there have been many along the way, but when I think about this question, like the first thing that comes to mind is letting someone go from a team is always hard for me. So, if we go back with Bitcoin Magazine and so on, when I started kind of on this entrepreneurial road and continuing with the Ethereum Foundation and going all the way to AKASHA today, this is something that hasn't got any more comfortable or easier, right? And part of it is because I care about the people I'm working with, and we create like these connections that go beyond just, employee or employer. And we connect as people, as friends, and working and having fun together. And I think that's also part of the playful creativity and some of the things that you can see through the website. If you go there and so on, that's like an expression of us having fun together. And this is definitely something that never gets easy, and it's hard, at least for me.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, when you do that, you do all that soul searching to bring someone onto a team, and a big team with a big purpose. When it doesn't work out, it's hard to swallow that.
Yeah.
You've been with the AKASHA Foundation and having that running now for a couple of years. You've been getting a lot of positive feedback along the way, a lot of validation along the way, I expect. When was a moment, recently or in the, since you've started this, that you realized that you had something that was really worth pursuing and pushing forward, beyond all boundaries?
So there was this moment when there was like an internet blackout, I think, as a protest against like SOPA and PIPA, for those that still recall it. And you had this moment where Wikipedia was down and a bunch of other big websites were down as a protest against like censorship and this law that was about to be passed in US, I believe. And that's when I was like looking at it, and actually I found myself trying to access knowledge on Wikipedia, but it was down as part of the protest against like censorship. And I was like, man, these guys are protesting against censorship through censorship, right? In a sense, like they look how the world could look like with us being down, but they were actually doing what it was supposed to do if the law has been passed. So arguably, yes, it could awaken some people, but at the same time, they were taking more like this protest of going outside with like cardboards and saying like, oh, down with SOPA and PIPA, when today, digitally at least speaking, the services we are using and that where we choose to put our time, that in itself is a vote that can, lead to big impact in the long run. It's always about the long tail, at least online. And you have many, many examples of successful companies that were able to become successful because of that long tail. Now, going back to the problem of censorship, and so we were working or beginning to work on the AKASHA as this, freedom of expression and the persistent web aspect of it. And we were thinking that, yes, we are definitely on the right road here, because this is a big problem. And, in the following years, you had all these problems with YouTube beginning to, censor various creators, like economically speaking. Boom, you have no ads on YouTube, your whole revenue source is gone. And a bunch of other, in between, Twitter and a bunch of other companies that found themselves in a position, and this is due to the architecture they used, the centralized aspect of it, where, in Turkey and other, let's say, challenging jurisdictions, these companies have to comply with the government request and other corporations if they want to keep, to still be doing business in that area. So as in the question for an advertising platform is, hey, do you still want to make all those millions from the citizens based in this jurisdiction? Yes. Okay, then I need the personal information of that guy. Who is the friend of that guy? And then you have like this backfire for all the people that thought these platforms are actually helping them to do something and achieve something for the betterment of their society and groups. But then they found out in a big problem, because the tool that was supposed to help them, at least, naively thinking that, is now used against them. And not only against them, but, since the social network aspect, it's also them, the friends of their friends and families and so on. Which, if you go back to the SS and KGB and that kind of all kind of a surveillance mindset, the surveillance capitalism, man, this is really bad. And it's something that we should not really accept as the way things are, because now I believe we have new ways of, let's say, tap into value that is simply not acknowledged yet as value. Like you have, for example, projects like IPFS and Filecoin and Swarm for Ethereum and a bunch of others that seek to monetize or offer people the ability to monetize their excess and surplus of hard disk, like the storage space. And there are others that are trying to build computation platforms where you can monetize the excess of computing power. And this is like without even touching on the time banking and other like universal basic incomes. And there are a bunch of other models that can be tried. But if we stick to the more tangible ones, like you can imagine now tools that help people connect with each other, organize collective action intelligently, and learn from it and make decisions and so on, without treating these users as the product, as something that has to be monetized and grinded into this funnel of extracting the data, information, and knowledge served in packaged nicely to advertisers that can micro-target advertising campaigns, exploiting that human vulnerability. So now I argue that we can do better, and at least we should be open to the idea of like these black swans when it comes to economic models using these things. And I still believe that we haven't really scratched the surface of the new business models and the new opportunities that are opened by these technologies. So I think the future is looking bright, but we have to realize that we are now in a problematic situation. Becoming aware of the problem is the first step towards fixing it.
Absolutely, and I think that this space is moving so quickly in terms of the technology side of it and how that is developing, but also the population growth. Like when you mentioned we're close to 8 billion people on Earth, I was still working off of 5 or 6 billion, right? Sorry, trillion. Is it trillion? Yeah. No, we're in billions now. We're in billions. Yeah. I'm not.
Oh, well, trillions would be crowded.
Yeah,
quite a party.
I'm not sure how long this planet would last if it was in the trillions. You've obviously, I can hear a lot of this in your voice, Mihai, and in the conversations we've had that, there have been a number of things that have been helpful to you over the years in terms of what makes you you, right? But just from your perspective, what are a couple of the personality traits that you think have been helpful to you in pursuing this?
Deep questions here. So I've read actually a really nice book. It's called The Power of Character Strengths. And in this book, the authors, and by the way, there's also a test that you can take at via character.org, I believe. And they managed to pack like the, let's say, traits as in a 24 character strengths grouped into 6 virtues. And it's a really nice book because it makes you aware that it's everyone manifests this. It's almost like the experiment with micro expressions, where you had these researchers going to all kinds of remote areas like the Papua New Guinea and so on that didn't have contact with civilization to see if they express similar emotions with their faces. And indeed, these people, without having any contact with civilization, they would smile when they are happy, or they would frown when they are sad. So those are like let's say embedded in our nature, like hardwired, not necessarily something socially learned. So in a similar way, I see this as a way of almost like building a periodic table of character strengths that each of us has and manifests to a certain extent. And in here, there are quite a few cool ones. I'm just going to say the virtues. They are split in courage, transcendence, justice, wisdom and knowledge, temperance, and humanity. And each of them, have like 5, 6. But if I would try to map these out and, looking through the lenses and understanding I have today, I would say the curiosity part is definitely something important that helped me many times. Just, stay with the problem a bit longer, or search for some things that some people might find boring or not interesting, which goes hand in hand with the love of learning, which is another character strength. I enjoy, reading and finding out more, and I usually go down the rabbit hole when there's something like really piquing my interest. And then there's also like the humor and playfulness. Sometimes, it's important to find the humor in something, even if it's like one of those tough situations. Like, find the humor in the good and the bad. And also, like the persistence and hope are a couple of things that keep me going, even when things, were not going as planned, alongside gratitude. So even when things were not going as planned or expected, and yes, like making a timeline, yes, we will have this version by then, or we will have this feature by X. It's like you have to live in a constant disappointment, so to say. It's like milestones are great for constantly passing, and going over them. yeah, I think these are like the main ones that really helped me throughout this journey. And by the way, it's a cool book. If anyone is interested in more in like self-discovery, self-improvement, and so on, this is a really nice read.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to have a look at that. We'll reference it in the show notes. And Mihai, everything you just said there, kind of validates my perception of you, but definitely did learn a few new things there. And it's so really cool to hear all this. And I think it's quite helpful in, helping to tell the story of AKASHA as well. I think we're at the point in time in the interview where Owen likes to ask his favorite question. So Owen, I'll hand it over to you to do just that.
Yes. So Mihai, look, we've learned a huge amount over the course of this episode and the previous interview with Pete around your journey. And you talked to us about some of your personality traits there. Is there anything about you that people wouldn't expect to know about you?
Well, there is something. I'm not sure how many people actually know this, but there was a brief period before entering the blockchain space when I played poker online semi-professionally. And I was very close to begin playing poker professionally, including like real life tournaments. And I got to the point where I was able to play like 12 tables at the same time on 2 monitors. And like the experience started as a way to see if I can understand the game, air quotes, and beat it in a way of using skill and knowledge rather than luck. Because many people take the assumption like poker is a gambling game and so on. But it's like, what if it's not? Because I saw so many pro players and people that were making constantly like decisions and they were winning. So it cannot be just luck. There has to be something there. And yes, there is luck involved, not to say that there isn't, because no hand is 100% a win situation. But the fun part is actually navigating this sea of uncertainties and playing the mind game, like constantly assessing so the first step, like, in the problem solving would be, what cards do I have? First, understand the game. What cards do I have in my hand? And by the way, this is Texas Hold'em. So you have like 2 cards and then, up to 5 cards down, and you try to see what combinations you have and then assess also what combinations the other person has. And when talking statistics, touching a bit also with the university there, it's a very interesting, to look at poker tournaments in general. And there is this phase called the bubble, which also is found in crypto, but it's not that kind of bubble. It's a bubble in the sense that, for example, if we take a 9-man tournament with people playing this poker game, they each put a certain entry fee. And then from these 9 person, only 3 will walk away with some money. The rest of it go with nothing. So you have this interesting risk-reward kind of meta game unfolding in the background, especially as you're approaching the, let's say, 6 person left, 5 person left, and even 4 person left. Like the 4 is like the peak. And in here is like, there are like some very interesting edge cases where even if you have something as good as an ace in your hand or an ace king, you have to understand that because you don't have that 100% guarantee. It's like, I have ace, it's done, I win. There is still like a 20% or 30%, even with like 2 random cards. So part of the lesson that I've kind of learned, that at no point you should take anything as a guaranteed success, but along the way, and I've played over 1 million hands, and if we take like over 1 million hands, taking consistently the right decisions adds up. And if on the other side you put luck side by side, you can see the difference clear day and night. So this is something that I think kind of also helped me in my kind of entrepreneurial endeavor. And I'm not sure how many people are aware of this kind of episode in my...
Well, I'll tell you, if we get you back to Dublin, Mihai, there's a place where we can take you where there's plenty of poker to be played. Okay. I think that's definitely on our list, and we can definitely have some fun with that. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure to learn more and to talk to you again, and I think we will keep talking. But thanks for coming on the show, Mihai.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for listening in.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you. That wraps it up, folks. Thanks to Mihai for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Remember, if you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, get in touch with the team at Top Tier Recruitment, as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com. To learn more about Mihai and the work of the AKASHA Foundation, you can find more information as well as the networks that they're on at akasha.org. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to Money Never Sleeps on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. You can also subscribe via our website to channels like Spotify and Stitcher, so just go to the subscribe page on moneyneversleeps.ie and follow the links. If you're searching directly on iTunes or Spotify, Money Never Sleeps is spelled as all one word. For more info and links, check out the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie. You can drop us a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie or at MNS Show on Twitter. As for me, I increase the odds of startup success. DM me on Twitter at Pete Townsend NV if you want to know more, and you can follow Owen on Twitter at Owen Fitzgerald9. Finally, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for recording and editing this podcast. Till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!